Hello, everybody. Good evening here from Finland. We have tonight our Sagittarius full moon webinar some hours before the actual full moon, which will be at 2:36 and 22 seconds Greenwich Mean Time tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon in London time. So calibrate the full moon accordingly. We have now to consider the nature of the third of the three fire signs, Sagittarius, found upon the mutable cross. We see here the banner for Sagittarius and its mantram. I see the goal, I reach that goal, and then I see another. Its rulers are Jupiter, exoterically, the Earth esoterically, and here's a little bit of Mars. It looks like it's been cut off, but it's in the appropriate red color. Jupiter with something of the violet in it as well because of its seventh ray and second ray. The Earth in blue-green, representing its second ray soul and third ray personality, and the red of Mars, in this case a sixth ray color. This is the sign of vision and anticipation on the way to the mountain of initiation, whether for the individual or increasingly for the group. We have here the Jofra illustration. Trying to get a little more centered here. We see here one of the symbols of Sagittarius, which is the centaur, the animal man with the power of the strong physical and astral nature represented by the horse aspect, and yet forward-looking according to the nature of desire. This symbol has been modified over time, we've been told, and now it has changed from the rider on the horse to the rider on the white horse, and eventually just to a little bit of the bow with the arrow, as we see here. And this has changed as man has evolved and as his aspirations have increased, and as he has become a more mental, psychological being with spiritual aspirations. The animal aspect of his nature has been left behind. The illustration here is not entirely esoteric. We will see more of that when we look at Francis Donald's illustrations. But we have here apparently Zeus in heaven on Mount Olympus, and his symbol is the eagle, representing great power. And we see a stream of energy coming towards the tip of the arrow of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is one of the intuitive signs, and as it has been said, the arrow of aspiration is sent forth and it returns as the arrow of intuition. So there is the ability to see into higher dimensions increasingly and to understand the wholeness towards which one is aspiring. The great labors and efforts of the Capricornian are not yet there, but in a way the lesser goat has been slain by the true disciple, and this is the goat skin, also suggesting something of the constellation Capella. But the unicorn here beneath and in the garden is biding his time. The goat is slain and the unicorn is not yet ascended. So we must fulfill the Sagittarian one-pointed discipleship before it becomes possible truly to climb the mountain of initiation, the mountain of karma as well, and to become the great triumphant and fighting beast, the unicorn of God, the true initiate. We see here a number of interesting things We notice here the hermit from the Tarot, and he is carrying a lighted lamp in broad daylight. I suppose, as it has been said of Diogenes, looking for an honest man. And the factor of truth is very strongly emphasized in Sagittarius. The straight shooter. Of course, that comes after having shot many errant arrows in the early days of aspiration. So there is the seeker for truth, and that is what Sagittarius truly is, especially in relation to discipleship. Each one of us now attempting to tread the path of discipleship must take Sagittarius as one of our major signs in which we can become the undeflectable, the one-pointed disciple. Now, I would like to turn to Francis's images and the notes that he has provided in relation to those images. Some very beautiful images. You will see here the archer, and as well we will have the generation, the genesis of an idea. He has provided us with two illustrations. And I would like to go over at least some of his notes. They focus on the labors of Hercules from one perspective, and the Sagittarian labor, the killing of the Stymphalian birds, and then on the idea of intuition and the birthplace of ideas. So let us move into the notes that he has provided. And here they are, at least hope they are relatively. He's looking at the first image. We are looking at the birds of Stymphalus. And from this arduously gained elevated vantage point on the path of return, that of the one-pointed disciple, the Sagittarian disciple looks out across the long way that lies ahead. And here we have that illustration. Note carefully, Francis will describe it, what it takes to reach that mountain and the kind of terrain that one must cross. He sees the water of his own astral domain ruffled by the thought forms that stream from the dark realm of his unconscious, crowding his inner landscape with the chaos and cross purposes of self-focused attention. Yes, self-centeredness is one of the difficulties of the less developed Sagittarian individual. As he struggles for self-mastery, he intuitively raises his bow and aims the arrow of his intent towards his goal. Silence fills him, an opening forms, and by the power of the flame that gleams beyond the mind, he breaks through the disabling influence of Camomanus. I think we see Camomanus illustrated by the swamp and the air above the swamp, and then it turns into a lake. But the gleam, the intuitive gleam, is far beyond at the mountaintop, offering us the possibility of initiation of the sun rising on the mountaintop. And this will relate, of course, eventually to Capricorn. Okay, the geometry of Sagittarius. The radius of the circle can be seen in the drawn bow and arrow. This gives rise to two opposed perspectives. From the point in the center, the Sagittarian aspirant releases the arrow of his intent towards the bounds of his own ring-pass knot. When he retrieves that arrow, he discovers that he now stands at the center of a new, expanded circle. And we realize that Jupiter, perhaps the major planet of Sagittarius, is always the planet of the expanding horizon. So this is what Sagittarians seem to want to do, both physically and within the personality realm, and later, more importantly for us, within the spiritual realm. Now the point two, the second perspective, standing on the periphery of the circle, the disciple focuses his intent on the center point. When, after great struggle, he reaches that goal, he finds himself on the periphery of an even greater circle. Paradoxically, both these perspectives are often active at the same time. But when the disciple becomes increasingly decentralized and is thus far more identified with his goal than with himself, the second scenario begins to dominate. In other words, the quest, the inward quest towards one's very center. And the center of the circle can mean the soul's center or even the spirit's center. In either case, the radius must be traversed. The projectile can certainly do that. And this is the most fundamental symbol we have for the path of return. Return, I would say, to the center. Now here's a section Francis has provided on ideas and thought forms. The great hint given to Heracles just before the start of his Sagittarian labor was, the flame that gleams beyond the mind reveals direction sure. That flame is the intuition, the language of the idea. The ideas we know come from the cosmic ethers, from the Buddhic plane especially and beyond. The word idea, as used occultly, connotes a far more elevated concept than that which is commonly understood by the term. The Tibetan tells us that ideas which are to be found on the Buddhic plane are used by the hierarchy to galvanize the minds of humankind and thus direct us towards an ever greater experience of life, and that this contact opens up from the moment a man has aligned himself and brought the lower nature into touch with the higher. And of course, we have to realize that the one-pointed Sagittarius and the symbol of the arrow is also the symbol of alignment of the higher nature of man with his lower and vice versa. Francis says, I have attempted to illustrate the concept in Genesis of an Idea. Let's look at that for a moment, and that's the next illustration. Let's take that in for a moment. Genesis of an Idea. This image depicts the planes that make up the human quaternary, that is, the personality nature, the mental, astral, and physical planes, with the light of the Buddhic realm informing the whole. The light of the Buddhic realm informing the whole. Superimposed on these horizontal strata is the domain, shown here as an ovoid wherein the experience of a human being takes place. Above the ovoid is the realm of the idea on its own plane. Shown here as the large sphere, whose lower part is just visible at the top of the piece. Notice that it is only this realm, its reflected light, that penetrates the crown of the ovoid. This is a more abstract symbol, of course. We go on. At the center of the human ovoid is a much smaller sphere that represents an apprehended idea, or as DK tells us, the idea revealed becomes then an ideal to the attentive mind and eventually something to be desired and materialized. The thought-form-making faculty of the mind then comes into play. The mind stuff becomes actuated by the energy of the idea, vitalized by the recognition of the soul, and the idea then takes its first real step towards embodiment. In this illustration, you can trace an idea's genesis as it passes from the Buddhic down to the various subplanes of the mental plane, then on down into the astral, where it further is reduced and distorted, represented by the drop of water and the ripples it causes down here, I suppose. Here are the ripples, the drop of water descending, rippling on the astral plane. Finally, at the lowest physical plane level of the ovoid, it becomes a fragmented shadow, or as DK would say, a mere idol. Here we are. Thought forms. The above quote by DK gives us some idea of the difference between an idea and a thought form. The difference is also illustrated by the two images. In the first piece, I've used the metaphor of the Stymphalian birds as camelomonastic thought forms which presented Heracles with the challenge of his Sagittarian labor. Control through self-mastery is the key here. Interestingly, Heracles gains that control through a gift from Athena, who represents higher mind, of symbols capable of producing a sound intolerable to the thought form-making faculty. I've often thought of this as the sound of wholeness, which shatters all lesser formulations. Francis goes on, were I to lift the birds of Stymphalus 1 degree further towards the esoteric, I might show how Heracles with lips parted, his intoned sound actually forming the bow, the arrow, and the open passage that separates him from the mountain top. Okay, and finally, whereas in Genesis of a thought form, the Buddhic plane is shown as a sphere informing the human ovoid, in the birds of Stymphalus, this same realm is depicted as a distant, radiant mountain top. Okay, look at that. As we see. We see that those thought forms closest to this radiance begin to take on the luminosity and the color of that intuitive realm. However, no thought form in service to the lesser self can enter this holy place, for only through profound silence can this temple be known. A.B. tells us in the Labors of Hercules, Sagittarius is called, in some ancient books, the sign of silence. For that is the lesson of Sagittarius, restraint of speech through control of thought. We realize, of course, that there is the third ray involved there, as the earth is one of the rulers of Sagittarius and is a ruler of the throat center, where speech, from which speech emanates. It must be applied, Saturn must be applied to that restraint in line with the plan. So here are all the things Francis has been speaking of, and I think many of you will have received these images and will be studying them in more detail than we can at this present time. So the keynote, of course, I see the goal, I reach that goal, and then I see another. And may the words of this final injunction to the disciple carry meaning into the heart and mind. So we're grateful to Francis for offering these beautiful and meaningful images which help us orient towards our meditative goal using the fourth and the second rays, as he does so well. Okay. All right, friends, now it's time for us to, with these in mind, we are within, let us say, 14 hours or so, a bit more really, more like 16 hours before the full moon. This is a day of renunciation. And when we reach the point 12 hours or so before the full moon, which will be perhaps in another 5 hours or so, we enter the day of safeguarding, which we receive and hold the energy. The world was never more in need of clear vision of the correct goal before humanity. The presentation of the ageless wisdom can be inspiring and orienting, and humanity needs that kind of illumined thought form if it is to be able to propel itself in the right direction. The light that gleams beyond the mind. We may have the intuition ourselves, to some degree cultivated, but we must explain this to the mind of humanity and find a way to inspire correct thought, correct aspiration, correct direction. This, at the moment, is sadly lacking for billions of people on our planet. So now we will go into our meditative work, and with this we are somewhat familiar already. We simply begin by becoming reasonably comfortable and yet alert as we watching the rhythm of our breath begin to withdraw our consciousness from the limiting personality sphere and its vehicles, and with detachment, using the yoga method of pratyahara, we enter deeply into the presence of the soul. We feel ourselves established within that transpersonal state beyond the normal confines of lower mind, emotion, and etheric physical nature. We are together in the state of soul. We have entered the state of light, love, and spiritual power. And together we feel this. And together we merge ourselves into a deep sense of the group soul. First, our meditating group, consciousnesses together. We feel towards each other all over the world as consciousnesses approaching each other, not as personal beings, but as something deeper. And we touch in consciousness, and we expand that consciousness to include the spiritually conscious people all over the world, the men and women of goodwill, the members of the new group of world servers. We seem to be with them. We seem to be with them in the same field of sentiency, of consciousness. This outward and inward reaching Sagittarian attitude, making the whole field one in our vision. We begin to touch in consciousness and in imagination all human beings as souls, whether in the body or out of the body. We get this sense of intimacy and consciousness with all human beings. We can expand that even to all sentient beings on our planet, touching the one soul, not only of humanity, but of the planet itself. And in this sense of being together in sentiency, in consciousness, we attempt to realize the great esoteric truth. We no longer use the thought, my soul or thy soul, but only the one consciousness, soul in which all souls are fused. And we will hold this unity, this realization that naught is but me, a great second realization of identification in the one soul of humanity and in the presence of that great being we call humanity, and even beyond, in a still greater presence, which is that which we can access on this planet, eventually the presence of the planetary logos. We are in the presence in one consciousness. That fluid something we call consciousness, which allows us to penetrate the apparent ring past knots of apparent others and identify as one being. And in this unity, we call upon the will aspect of that part of the one soul which we represent. According to our soul ray, the will to initiate, first ray, the will to unify, second ray, the will to evolve, third ray, the will to harmonize, fourth ray, the will to act, fifth ray, the will to cause, sixth ray, the will to expression or express, seventh ray. We bring this will aspect of the soul into our mental nature, into the very center of our mental nature. We feel the growing point of tension, the point of intention from which we build the antikarana. We feel it strengthened by the will aspect of the soul. We can repeat that aspect of the will to ourselves. Or if we do not know, we at least repeat the will to unify. The will to unify. We feel ourselves imbued by the will aspect of the soul, which will strengthen our approach to the higher frequencies, the higher dimensions, the higher and inner worlds. We gather up the lower energies of the personality towards the mental unit, where a concentration of intention is being created. You breathe it upward, strengthening this mental unit, this point of projection. Together we are as if strengthening one point of mental power upon the lower mental plane for the group, as if one mental unit for the group. A point of projection. And through our picture-making, creative imagination, we visualize the rainbow bridge, whether ascending or going interior towards the center. A rainbow bridge of two colors, one of our soul ray, one of our personality ray, the red of the first ray, the indigo of the second, green of the third, yellow of the fourth, orange, if we wish, of the fifth, or indigo as well, the rose color or light blue of the sixth, the violet of the seventh. These colors can be used for both the soul ray and personality ray, and we visualize the two-strand bridge, the soul ray color, the personality ray color, or use indigo if you are not sure. And that bridge we will visualize as a bridge of light, and when the entire group antikarana is brought together, multicolored light, all the colors of the rainbow, ascending by a cone towards the blue-white diamond representing the spirit aspect, or moving inwardly towards the center, the diamond blue-white center, however you choose to imagine. Upward and inward are the same. and start to feel the quality of the triad. The higher manas, the planetary mind, the higher love, the buddhi, planetary love, inclusive love, the higher will, the will as the planetary logos would see it accomplished, that higher planetary will, reflected to some extent in the cosmic ethers where the triad is found. And through the Antakarana we begin to attune to these higher aspects of ourselves, sometimes called the higher triad. Sagittarius is so suitable to shoot the arrow of projection into that higher triad. And so, using a word of power, a beam of clear, white, radiant light across the multicolored bridge, we will use the words of power, especially those for the second ray. I see the greatest light. I see the greatest light. And we will project while sounding the Om together, but thinking to ourselves this great inclusive mantra which seeks the illumination of the triad. We will think, I see the greatest light. As we project using the Sagittarian energy and intone the Om on the second ray note, which is G in this case. Om. I see the greatest light, as if activating downflow from the triad, invocation and evocation. I see the greatest light. And thus coming in rapport with the spiritual mind, spiritual love, spiritual will of the triad, all overshadowed by the great monad, the sense of pure being. Being together now, all of us, in a wider planetary sense. Our consciousness expanding over the world and through the higher dimensions. And nothing personal in it, something more planetary in this realization of the higher light, the greatest light, greatest at least that we can access. And around us, it is as if the members of the spiritual triad are there. The triadal consciousnesses of the masters in their ashrams. The majority of ashrams being found upon the Buddhic plane, but some, of course, Atmic and some monastic, yet all triadal. And their presence is there. Great energy centers of the graduate human beings to our masters and shohans, and their presence at this time of meditation, as they are gathering too in this increasing point of tension, strengthens us in our global identification. Sagittarius, esoterically ruled by the earth, the planetarization of consciousness. As Dane Rudyard called it, he with Sagittarius rising, the sense of a planetarized consciousness we are gathering, reinforced by the presence of the members of the spiritual hierarchy, to whom as energy centers we offer our heartfelt gratitude with our salutations, our commitment to co-work with them, to co-create with them. Our salutations are an affirmation of our solidarity with their intentions, with their goal, with their direction. And first, towards the Christ. Salutations to the Christ, the Master of all masters, the teacher alike of angels and of men. Salutations to the triangle of masters with whom we work most closely, that is, the Master Moria, Kutumi, Chualkul, that triangle of masters that sought to bring the agent's wisdom closer to humanity against all obstacles. Salutations to the Master Moria, First Ray Master, head of all esoteric schools and organizations. Salutations to the Master Kutumi, the Bodhisattva of the age of Capricorn, and now responsible most for the engineering and preparing the reappearance of the Christ. Salutations to the Master Jualkul, who is the teacher who has given us the Alice Bailey books and is preparing aspirants for initiation, the first and second degree, and even the third. The teacher closest to us in the larger sense. We offer our group salutations to the one whom we conceive to be our own master, and finally, salutations to the spiritual hierarchy of our planet in its entirety. the great heart center of the planet, which we, as members of the Nuclear World Servers, are approaching, harmonizing with, identifying with, merging with, to the extent possible. And we lift our thoughts then to Shambhala, the head center of our planet, the center where the will of God is known. And with deepest reverence and in all humility, we attempt to identify together as a group soul, a group presence, to attune with the presence of Sanat Kumara standing at the center of Shambhala. And inwardly, silently, the long silent as we imagine the group imbued with his energy, the energy of will and power, and yet the greatest exemplar of the teaching ray upon our planet. The will at the center of the one fundamental school of occultism in Shambhala, the long, silent inner Om, to fill the group and all humanity with that great will. So our alignment as a group, in relation to hierarchy, imaginatively, in relation to Shambhala, imaginatively, is present inwardly in our mind's eye. We are ready then to begin to approach the energies particularly available at this time of the Sagittarian full moon. We are as if a point of brilliant light, the entire group, not individuals, but merged in this point of light, which is also a point of love and power. We feel ourselves merging into a point, a luminous point. And above a golden pathway, this point hovers. The golden pathway leads to the center of the sun with an indigo center. That pathway will shorten. We'll begin to shorten the golden pathway, shortening and merging into an indigo sphere. Shorter and shorter. And we, the point of illumination on that golden path, travel with the path towards the indigo sphere, towards the indigo sphere, until the golden pathway is merged in the indigo sphere, and we, that point of light within the indigo sphere. We together, as a group soul, group presence within the indigo sphere, and, as it were, aware, especially of the presence of Master DK, with his vast knowledge of the planetary and zodiacal energies which we intend to approach. And we can somewhat imaginatively feel his consciousness pervading that of the group. giving us that special sensitivity and understanding we will need to come en rapport with these great energies we intend to invoke. We will be approaching the planetary expression first, the lesser lords that represent the great zodiacal lord of Sagittarius, of the constellation Sagittarius. We will be approaching the stream, which is here intensified at this time, of Jupiter, the Orthodox ruler, conveying a vision of ever-expanding horizons and the enthusiastic motivation to move beyond and through the limitations of the present ring pass not. This energy which will expand our ring pass not, even the ring pass not of our soul, until eventually the ring pass not of the monadic sphere is reached. This will be Jupiter, this great expansive energy so allied to our solar logos. And we will approach a deeper understanding of our own planet, manifesting through the Earth globe, the Earth chain, and through the Earth scheme, the Earth, the esoteric ruler of Sagittarius, conveying the realization that our particular planetary sphere, as one aspect of the Earth scheme, must be spiritually enlivened until it becomes outwardly the sacred planet it already is inwardly. Our Earth, the sacred globe, within a sacred chain, within a sacred scheme eventually. The sense of our Earth and what it means to live upon the surface of the Earth. We will attempt to approach this in understanding. And hierarchically, we'll approach Mars, conveying the zeal to redirect and elevate the tendency of all our elemental lives, the lunar lords, reorienting them through the power of aspiration. Mars ruling the sixth manifested creative hierarchy, turning these lunar lives upward so they can become one day devas and not simply elementals. We will approach these planets, or rather the Devic energy streams which are accessible to us and are of the same quality as the planetary logo informing those planets. First then, Jupiter. We know what its glyph looks like, something like the number 4. We can see it in the indigo and slight purple hues. It has both the 2nd and 7th ray. The power of Jupiter we ponder upon in relation to Sagittarius to extend one's vision of truth and reality, to expand one's consciousness, to embrace an ever-widening ring pass not. And this is as well the group ring pass not, expanded for a wider embrace, a wider horizon, greater depth, greater sphere of sentiency. We so need this planet to make a positive impact upon the confined consciousness of many human beings. We embrace the positivity of Jupiter, its assurance of beneficial growth and eventual fulfillment. fulfilling our archetype with no obstructions, becoming that which we were meant to be, and not just a part of it. Wholeness. We realize the growing sense under this Jupiterian stream of all-inclusive wholeness, which it confers. It's as if we can put the glyph of Jupiter in our heart center or within our causal body and have these realizations. The great soul embrace, leaving none out, including all. And finding a space for all within this wholeness. United in soul fulfillment. One day humanity and all its many parts will be united in soul fulfillment. And we bring that stream of Jupiterian energy imaginatively into the group. It impresses us. It has an effect upon our group and the wider groups. Where is it? How is it that we need this Jupiterian energy? Let us say, within our group of esoterically inclined disciples, how is Jupiter needed? Maybe each of us has a different idea how this Jupiterian stream is needed, but certainly in the positivity in relation to all confining circumstance, moving beyond the strictures of circumstance, moving into this unbounded, eventually unbounded spiritual life. Let us direct the current of Jupiter into the group, visualizing ourselves imbued with these divine qualities and visualizing the group absorbing these divine qualities and supplementing the qualities that it has with the Jupiterian qualities that it needs. We direct this indigo-purple stream into the group and see the group enhanced. One of these qualities to be absorbed will be joy. And we will experience together the joy of the group, the joy of a group which co-works with hierarchy, co-creates with hierarchy. The joy of our work. We will experience that and become the joyful disciplic group on its way to greater service and greater illumination. Then in our attunement we move into the visualization of our planet, the Earth, in relation to Sagittarius. This need to redeem the etheric physical nature, both of human beings and of our planetary globe. This need to refine this etheric vibration, for the Earth is closely related to the etheric body, and to revitalize these lesser and greater etheric vehicles in ways which disengage the energy patterns of these vehicles from the lunar tendencies, which are downward, the elemental tendencies. No, we want the upward tendencies and an etheric body of this planet which will carry the energies, which elevate it. Vitality, so often demonstrated by Sagittarian people, their love of movement, their use of the physical body, the yoga, the exercise, all of these things expressing the vitality, the etheric body, and we need that for the planet. These influences are conveyed by the logos of our planet, related in a way to the dragon Sagittarius, and our planet. All in alignment, a great triangle. These influences conveyed by the logos of our planet help us realize our capacity as one-pointed disciples to tread the path which lead not only to our own glorification through initiation, but to the glorification of our planet until it becomes outwardly as well a sacred planet. The glorification of the path is ruled by Sagittarius. We realize the earth is a sacred heavenly temple in which spirit finds its embodiment in spiritually regenerated matter, matter which ascends, which etherealizes, density which becomes eventually ethereal, following the upward arrow. The etheric revitalization of the individual, the group, and of the planet. And success for our planetary logos in treading his path towards his next initiation, the second minor, actually the fourth minor, and the second major initiation. Together, the glorification of the earth. The etheric vitalization which will carry the higher energies needed. We are in this stream. The stream is coming in. You can feel the pranic stream, which gives us the power to pursue the direction we envision in Sagittarius. And we in tune with it in such a way that it must enter the group. And redeem our earth nature. The earth nature of the group, the earth nature of the planet. How are these energies of our planetary locals needed in our groups? How can all that is of earth within our nature be rightly oriented and etherically vitalized? Let us feel these energies, the earth energies of our logos pouring into the group. Helping us individually tread the path one-pointedly, helping the planet tread its own path one-pointedly. And as we see this, we sound the Om, seeing the energy arrive within the group and within the larger sphere. Om. then at last, the red Mars, the hierarchical ruler, but one day moving towards the rose, when purified, the planet stimulating the power of aspiration. Sagittarius so identified with aspiration. Aspiration becoming transmutation and spiritual elevation. The moon rising towards the sun. Realizing Mars is the planet driving the quest for ever new experiences. So Sagittarian, of a reality lying beyond the present ring pass not of consciousness. Through the elevatory immolation of the lunar nature. The lunar nature in flames becoming the Deva nature. The movement towards the fourth initiation, when immolation occurs. This burning fire connected with Sagittarius, the elevating fire. We realize the potency of Mars impelling towards, even treading the way of higher evolution, which leads the outward bound monad towards the truer home, a truer home in those distant constellations which form the chakras of our local, one about whom not may be said, a great super constellational logos, Sagittarius, and the outward bound monad, really the inward bound monad, but moving towards those great constellational centers. Mars, the fire which impels this great adventure, and even our lesser adventures which must be counted as great compared to our relatively confined consciousness. The aspirational fire of hierarchical Mars, reorienting the lunar nature until that which drags us down no longer does so, but the energies rise towards ascension. One day, the ascension of the sixth degree, not the popular interpretation of ascension, no, something real. One day, after we have earned it, the courageous, fiery, aspirational, upward rising Mars, transforming the elemental into the Deva. And the group needs it, and we are in the stream. We see our groups in need of the Martian energy, so that all may be on fire with the will to love and eventually with love itself. The enfiring of the groups in the right way, moving fire by friction into solar fire, and eventually into a still greater fire, electric fire. Mars, the hierarchical ruler. And as we see the group enfired, we will sound the Om on the red note, the C, and see the groups imbued by an aspirational fire which cannot be resisted. And so we have expanded, we have purified, we have trodden the path, we have been enfired by the upward rising aspiration. We are ready then to attune as a group to still higher energies And we deeply and reverently raise our group consciousness towards the blue logos as our objective, the solar logos. Our solar initiations will lead in that direction. Sagittarius will point the way, the arrow of intent, towards the heart of love wisdom within our solar system. The ever-present, always present, God of love wisdom, the solar logos, in our hearts. In our souls. In the being which we are, monadically. A tiny unit we are of the great God of love and wisdom. Our solar identification at this time, when the sun is so emphasized over the lunar nature, even though it is called the full moon, it's really the full sun. The great glory of the God of love wisdom, shining everywhere through the solar system. And then out beyond the system towards the constellation itself. A brilliant constellation, really. So inspiring to look at in the night sky, especially here in the northern hemisphere in the winter night sky. Its peculiar quality of light, a beam of directed, focused light. In this, the point of light becomes the beam, revealing a greater light ahead and illumining the way to the center of the light. We remember here what Francis said about the inward pointing arrow towards the center, the radius traversed. In that light we shall see light and Sagittarius guiding us from one light to the next with ever greater intensity. The inclusion of lights within lights, following that beam to ever ascending initiatory points. We open ourselves to the feel of this Sagittarian energy. It is real, it is present, it imbues us. It carries the fourth ray of harmony through conflict, the great human experiment, the fifth ray of concrete mind, search and discovery. And most intensely it carries the sixth ray of devotion and idealism at this time. Fourth, fifth, and sixth rays, as well as the second ray of Jupiter, the third ray of Earth, and the sixth ray of Mars. Some of these rays accented more than once. But these energies coming into us, enriched we are, enhanced we are in the flow, nourished, fed, augmented we are. Empowered to make the journey. And finally, at this peak of alignment we contemplate, we as a group, in the group mind and presence and soul, contemplate. I see the goal. I reach that goal. And then I see another. I see the goal. I reach that goal. And then I see another. What is the individual goal? What is the group goal? What is the goal? for the nations, the goal for humanity. I see the goal. I reach that goal. And then I see another. I see the goal. I reach that goal. And then I see another. There is so much we can achieve individually, in our groups, as humanity. We need simply to direct ourselves upon the proper path. To follow the light that gleams beyond the mind. To access whatever intuition we can. To tread the path aright and to become that path itself, which we already are and have been ever since the first going forth in the night of time. The confidence of Sagittarius, the joy of Sagittarius, the assured attainment of the objective. I see the goal. I reach that goal. And then I see another. Humanity is seeing a new goal now. Beyond the ancient selfishness and maldistribution, it's seeing a way to move together fairly. According to high principles. It may take many years before this is manifested, but in the Aquarian age it will be far more manifested than now. And the destiny of humanity will be clarified. Monadic destiny, soul destiny. Humanity stands in so much need of the clarification of its destiny. And this we can share. We who know something of the ageless wisdom can project the arrow of truth into the consciousness of humanity so that the sense of goal, objective, destiny is deglamorized, clarified, substantiated. Together we can do this. The alignment is, at least imaginatively, from the very center of the one about whom naught may be said, our local super constellation Logos, the center of which can be deemed the Pleiades, out through Orion, its star Betelgeuse, related to Sagittarius, from Sagittarius distributing the fourth, fifth, and sixth rays to our solar Logos, the center of our system, and outward towards Jupiter, towards our planet, towards Mars, those three, descending into Shambhala under the law of assembly, gathered for distribution throughout the planet, stimulating the sense of monadic destiny, stimulating all souls upon the path, descending, purifying, orienting the personalities, rightly orienting the human unit and humanity as a whole. This alignment, stimulating ajna and the solar plexus in the right way, so that indeed we do see ahead, we see the target, making the eye single and rightly oriented towards the goal that the single eye reveals. Indeed, after such meditations in this period, we as groups should be better oriented towards our spiritual destiny and more determined to tread those paths enthusiastically, with joy, with aspiration, with undeflectibility, energized, aligned, empowered. And in the world we see the need. We look out and we see the need. There are so many problems, especially problems due to lack of vision or glamorous vision or illusory vision. Those problems can be dealt with when the right vision occurs. So choose a problem, see it, and see how the Sagittarian energies can correct it, improve, bring about solution. And in our alignment, we will, as if project this Sagittarian energy and the planetary energies accompanying it into the problem area. We will bless and we will see solution. We will see right orientation, vision, the ability to move forward, to progress. We will see the problems left behind because the goal is seen with clarity. We will project into the problem area. And as we do so, think to yourself a short formula of words, a mantra, a corrective formula which you want to convey to the problem area on the sound of the Om. Think it first. And preserving our alignment with the great ones and with the great energies now available, and resolving to intensify these energies and our reception of them as the time of the full moon approaches, 2:36 and 22 seconds at Greenwich Mean Time, London time, tomorrow, or at least on the 10th, maybe on the 11th in New Zealand. We will sound the great invocation as a mantra of orientation, correct direction, giving a way that humanity can move forward together towards the reappearance of the Christ and towards the coming of the hierarchy. We will sound it together, and where you are, you sound the 3 Oms after it. I'm assuming that most of us know this invocation, and if we do not, then just listen as the words come, identify with them, identify with the thought, enter the energy. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, Let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. So friends, keep the alignment. This is a great sign of alignment. Keep the sense that these energies are real. They're flowing through us as individuals and groups, and feel these energies, and let your thoughts and your words reflect these energies as over the next approximately 16 hours, we intensify these energies so that when the time of the exact full moon comes, we are ready to stand in the presence of the open door and receive even more fully, so that we can serve more fully in the distribution of these energies. Thank you very much for attending, and we will make this meditation available to you both in audio and video form as soon as we possibly can, hopefully within just a few hours, so that if for any reason you wish to use it on the actual day itself or on the days of distribution following the full moon day, you can do so. Thank you for being with us, and have a wonderful Sagittarius full moon experience. We'll see you then.